You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
86 riders will comprise the Cycling New Zealand and paracycling team to contest the historic combined UCI Cycling World Champs starting in Scotland this weekend. The championships are a first for the sport. Over 200 events making up 13 separate World Championship disciplines over 11 days. The men's road team, headed by World Tour riders George Bennett, Patrick Bevan, Lawrence Pithy and Corbin Strong, along with UCI Pro Team riders James Oram and Ryan Christensen. George Bennett is with us out of Glasgow. Thanks for joining us, George. This is massive with all the disciplines coming together. You a fan of that?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I'm actually not up there yet. I'm flying out first thing tomorrow. I'm coming in pretty late, but from all accounts, it's pretty special having all the disciplines finally together. You know, the track are doing well. Downhill girls have obviously got New Zealand off fire. So, I think it's pretty cool to. I mean, these events are all very loosely associated by the fact that we have two wheels, but it is all under the same governing body, and it is sort of makes it like a super worlds, let's say. So it is pretty awesome, I think, to bring it all together.
Terrific. So what's the format once you do arrive? What's the format for the road team? What lies ahead of you?
Well, they're saying it's one of the most technical road courses in history. So it's not really my kind of course. It's sort of far too flat. I'm normally there for the mountains, but I kind of was at a loose end and thought it would be a good thing to do and head up and have a crack and just see what happens. I think it's a course where no one really knows how it's going to play out. I mean, I've heard people talking about it being a bunch sprint. I've heard people talking about it being a classics course. I think it's such an unpredictable course, and weather's going to play a huge part. It's potentially cold and raining, and I think it's going to be just as much about sort of positioning and tactics and things like that as it will be about legs.
Will you get the opportunity to ride the course, or at least have a look at it before the event?
Yeah, I'll get up there tomorrow nice and early and have a. Normally I'd head in a bit earlier, but been a little bit crook this week. But I've come right now, and I'll get a spin round, and I know the boys have already had a look at it, and we can actually do a lot of stuff, sort of let's say extramurally lately. You know, we can. I've looked at the course a lot and had a lot of analysis done from afar and videos and profiles and things like that. So. I've got a pretty good idea of it already, and I'll just go through and check it out. But we do 14 or 15 laps of the final circuit, so after a couple, you're pretty familiar with it anyway, and the race really kicks off in the last 10 laps. So with circuit racing like this, it's not as crucial as say a to B.
Indeed. You mentioned you've been crook. You also, of course, had that recent crash on the Tour of Switzerland. It looked horrendous, man. I mean, how bad was it?
Oh, it was pretty nasty. But I mean, as far as crashes go, I think it's especially considering what happened a couple of days later, and and how bad crashes can be. I think I can be pretty happy with how it is and how how I'm back on the bike and how everything's going now. Rode well on the weekend over at San Sebastian, and just a little bit under the weather this week, but nothing too bad at all. So. Like I said, I don't think any of those things are going to be detracting from Sunday. I think the biggest obstacle for me is just racing on a course that's definitely not my style of racing. But you got to be there to be in and to have a chance. And so why not?
Why not indeed? Yeah, why not? You just alluded there to the tragic death of Swiss rider Gino Mada. I mean, how challenging a time was that for you and the other competitors on that Tour of Switzerland?
Oh, I think not just the guys that were there, but I think the whole peloton in general feels it. I mean, I don't think there's many days that go by without people thinking about it and it affecting you in some way. And I think I mean, it is. People say it's a dangerous sport and there's risks involved, but I don't really think anyone ever considers that that you're going to not come home when you go out for it, when you pin a number on and go for a race. So I think and everyone's obviously been shaken up a lot by it, and at some point the racing, the peloton doesn't stop. It's, you into the Tour, into the welters coming after the Worlds. I mean, at some point you're in the race and you just try and focus on the race that you're doing. And it's just been a. I mean, it wasn't. It's not the first guy to die in a bike race, unfortunately, as well. I mean, there's been, in my career, there's been 4 guys that I've known that have died. So it's it's a really tragic part of the sport, and I really hope that it's something we can the sport can evolve to really sort of limit that, or eliminate it, eliminate that risk.
Yeah, I mean, even hearing you say that, George, that 4 of your fellow competitors have passed away while competing. Is there change needed here? Even crashes that cause injury in Grand Tours, is there change needed, and what would that change look like?
Oh, mate, this is this is a conversation that it's a very wide-ranging conversation and absolutely change is needed in many ways, and there are many things we can do. And they are, we've just, there's a new president of the CPA, which is basically the riders' union, and there are some changes coming into place, but it's a huge array of things. I mean, if we're talking strictly about in the race, I mean, it's from race courses to how the final is laid out, to how obstacles are marked, to how we race as individuals, and then you've got this whole other issue of riding your bike on an open road. And I mean, it's a sport that is littered with danger, and it's a topic that has every time there is a tragedy or a big crash, it is something that gains a lot of attention, and then sometimes it feels like we just move on and then until the next thing happens. But I do believe that there has been some really positive changes and some ideas floated, and it's a very complex issue because it is a sport where, I mean, if we're talking about, if you're good on the downhill, I want to attack on a downhill, and my competitor either follows me, has 3 options. He either can stay on my wheel, can get dropped because he's doesn't have the risk, doesn't have the skills to keep up, or third option, try really hard and crash. And so there is some responsibility of should we be racing each other, trying to take advantage on downhills and things like that. And for me, I mean, that is a really unique part of the sport, is being skilled as well as being strong. So there's all sorts of issues, and it's very complicated, but I think there are a lot of basic things that can happen with course organisation, course design, with with layouts and how things are marked. And I think that is moving in a positive direction, but obviously not fast enough.
Does it ever make you consider not doing it anymore?
Oh yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, that definitely flashes through your head, and I think, but I feel very, very privileged to be a professional cyclist. I love this sport more than anything, and it's I mean, I have a good, I guess, a gift of being able to switch a lot of it off. And that's not always, sometimes I can't switch it off, and you put the brakes on, and as soon as you brake before the other guy, then, you're at the back of the bunch and you're out of the race. So, I'm not always able to switch it off, obviously, and that goes for everybody. We all have our moments where we sort of are feeling less, a bit more risk adverse or something like that. But I think, in general, no, I don't think about not riding because of the dangers. But maybe that will change later in my life when I have other priorities. But for the moment, I just feel, I love what I do, and I feel really excited every time I go to a bike race. But it doesn't mean that fear isn't there, or that acknowledgement of that risk isn't there. And I do think about, even training, I think about it sometimes, and out of nowhere, flashes the head and you think, shit, put the brakes on, and you sort of refocus and get on with it. And I don't know, it's a complicated thought process, and it's a complicated issue that isn't sort of black or white that you go, okay, now I'm scared and I don't do this. It's sort of, it's a spectrum thing, and some days are different to others. And I think, that when fear creeps in, unfortunately, it's not it doesn't really mean that you're going to get good results. I think, as soon as you're scared on the bike, it's or unable to deal with that fear, then it's not conducive to getting any sort of result.
Amazing insight, mate. Thank you for sharing all of that. That's incredible. Just a couple to finish. Obviously, you couldn't ride the Tour de France. The crash in the Swiss Tour took you out of contention for that. How did you reckon Corbin Strong went on the Tour de France?
Yeah, it was good. It looked good. I didn't tune into heaps of it in the end. Just found it a bit hard watching from the couch. But I did see him get up in the sprints and looked like he was finding his way pretty well. And I know. I've just been out with his director, fellow Kiwi Sam, who's a sports in the team car and his team, and said he got through really well and never in trouble, and that's always a really good sign for your first tour. And I think he did a really good job, and definitely potential there. And I think Tour de France this year looked like a bit of a lottery. Sometimes if you got in the right breakaway, then you had a chance of winning a stage. And unfortunately it just didn't get in the winning break, but that was more down to sort of lottery than ability. And I think if the cards fell his way, then it's definitely a chance there to grab a stage.
Good stuff. And so beyond the world champs that you're about to embark upon, what next for you, George? You got much else going on back end of this year?
Yeah, it's I don't know, mate. It's a little bit. It's always interesting with contract year, and a lot of it depends on what bit of paper you sign and things like that. So we're going to work it out soon, and hopefully we put all politics aside and we just pick the best 8 guys to go to the Vuelta. But we'll see what happens with that, and hopefully know more on that front. If it's not the Vuelta, then it's a pretty quiet end of the year for me. So hopefully I can get on that Vuelta squad and get back into the big mountains, because I feel like I've definitely missed those this year.
Yeah, well, I don't think many people around the world say they miss climbing up mountains, but I know it's your forte and your sweet spot, mate. So I hope you get that opportunity at the back end of 2023. It's been amazing chatting to you, George. All the best for what happens in Glasgow and beyond, and thanks for being so generous with your time.
No worries, mate. All right. Thanks. See you later.
Thanks, George. See you later, mate. That's George Bennett out of the New Zealand cycling team. The women's team pursuit quartet has won the country's second ever silver medal in the event at the Track Cycling World Champs in Glasgow. The Kiwis led at the 2,000 metre mark, but were hauled in by England over the final 8 laps. The men's team pursuit has beaten Australia in the bronze medal ride, catching the Aussies with a kilometre to go. And an incredible showing from Kiwi riders in the junior women's downhill mountain bike race. First, second and third. Elise van Leuven won gold from Poppy Lane. Sasha Ernest was third. Great stuff.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.